The forest was silent, except for the gentle rustling of leaves in the morning breeze. Buddha sat calmly beneath a large Bodhi tree. Disciples gathered around him, their eyes filled with reverence and curiosity. Buddha's serene presence calmed even the most restless minds among them. Ananda, a young disciple, sat closest to Buddha, his face tense with unspoken thoughts. Buddha turned his gaze to Ananda, his voice warm and inviting. "Ananda, why do you hold your thoughts so tightly?" Buddha inquired, his words cutting through the quiet morning air. Ananda hesitated, his head bowed, struggling to articulate his feelings. "I fear my mind lacks clarity," Ananda finally admitted, his voice trembling with self-doubt. "My thoughts run wild like untamed horses." Buddha's eyes softened, and he gestured toward the surrounding forest. "Observe, Ananda, the forest does not struggle to grow," he began. "It bends with the wind, yet remains deeply rooted in the earth," Buddha explained, his voice filled with patience. Ananda looked around, his gaze following Buddha's gesture, observing the swaying trees. "Is your mind not like the forest, capable of finding balance?" Buddha asked, encouraging reflection. Ananda's furrowed brow eased slightly, and he nodded with cautious understanding. "The breath," he said, "is a thread that anchors you to the present, where calmness resides." A young disciple named Rahula raised his hand and asked, "Master, why does observing the breath bring such calmness to our hearts?" The Buddha smiled, his face radiant with compassion. Buddha smiled gently, acknowledging the moment's perfection. "Do not silence the thoughts, Ananda," Buddha said, his words steady and clear. "Welcome them as one welcomes a passing traveler." The disciples listened intently, their breaths synchronized with the calm rhythm of Buddha's teachings. "Clarity is not achieved by force but by stillness," Buddha explained. He reached down, picking up a handful of dry leaves scattered at his feet. "See these leaves?" Buddha asked, holding them up for all to see. The disciples nodded, intrigued by the simplicity of his gesture. "The wind carries them where it wills, yet they remain whole," Buddha observed. "Thoughts are like these leaves," Buddha explained, releasing them to the breeze, carried by conditions, yet they do not define us. The leaves fluttered away, a visual representation of detachment and impermanence. Ananda's expression softened as understanding began to replace his earlier tension. "Do not wrestle with your creativity, Ananda," Buddha continued. "Instead, allow it to emerge naturally from your mindfulness." Ananda lowered his head, humbled by the profound simplicity of Buddha's wisdom. "But Master, how can I trust such a fleeting process?" Ananda asked, his doubt not entirely erased. Buddha turned his gaze skyward, the sunlight filtering through the canopy above. "Trust in the impermanence of all things, Ananda," he said. "Impermanence is not an enemy but the fertile ground for creativity." His words resonated, echoing in the quiet sanctity of the forest. Mindfulness allows us to see impermanence as opportunity, not obstacle, Buddha continued, his tone steady and unwavering. He placed a hand on the ground, feeling the soil beneath his fingers. "The earth does not mourn the fallen leaves but nourishes the seeds they leave behind," he explained. "Your thoughts, too, are like these seeds," Buddha added, each one carrying the potential for growth and transformation. Ananda looked at the ground, his earlier tension dissolving like morning mist under the rising sun. "Do not fear the passing of thoughts, Ananda," Buddha advised. "Embrace their impermanence with gratitude." A gentle breeze swept through the grove, carrying the fragrance of wildflowers and the sound of rustling leaves. Buddha closed his eyes briefly, his presence radiating calmness. The disciples followed suit, their breaths slowing as they mirrored Buddha's meditative state. After a moment of silence, Buddha spoke again, his voice even softer. "Creativity arises when we observe without clinging. Without aversion, he said, "Let your awareness flow like this breeze, unconfined and free." Ananda took a deep breath, his shoulders relaxing as he absorbed Buddha's words. The disciples watched intently as Ananda reached for his writing tools, his movements deliberate and unhurried. "Allow your senses to guide your thoughts, Ananda," Buddha encouraged, "but let your mindfulness anchor them." Ananda began to write, his pen moving steadily across the parchment. His earlier struggle seemed a distant memory as inspiration began to flow effortlessly from his pen. Buddha smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting the joy of witnessing Ananda's transformation. The mind, when stilled, becomes a mirror reflecting the beauty of the present moment, Buddha remarked. Creativity is not something we summon, he continued. It is the natural expression of our mindful awareness. Ananda paused, lifting his pen as a new thought occurred to him, his face alight with inspiration. The other disciples watched in awe, their admiration silently expressed in their attentive gazes. Buddha turned to them, addressing the group collectively. "Each of you carries the seeds of creativity," he said, "nourished by mindfulness and watered by intention." His words resonated, each one like a drop of wisdom rippling through the disciples' hearts. Creativity is not reserved for the gifted few, Buddha explained. It is inherent in all who dwell in awareness. He gestured toward the forest once more, the trees standing tall as silent witnesses to his teachings. Nature itself is the greatest creator. Unburdened by fear or doubt, Buddha observed. Learn from the trees, the river, the wind, he advised. Their creativity flows effortlessly through harmony with the present. Ananda looked up from his parchment, his eyes meeting Buddha's with newfound clarity and gratitude. "Thank you, Master," Ananda said, his voice steady and sincere. Buddha acknowledged Ananda's gratitude with a slight nod, his eyes filled with compassion. The disciples bowed their heads in unison, their respect for Buddha deepened by the day's teachings. As the sun began its descent, the grove was bathed in the golden glow of twilight. Buddha rose to his feet, his movements as graceful as the flowing river. "Carry these teachings with you," Buddha said, "not as rules but as a way of being." The disciples stood as well, their hearts filled with determination and serenity. "Mindfulness is the key to unlocking your boundless potential," Buddha concluded, his voice imbued with timeless wisdom. He began to walk toward the edge of the grove, his disciples following closely behind. The forest seemed to echo his teachings, the rustling leaves and birdsongs a hymn to mindfulness. As they left the grove, the disciples carried not only their belongings but also a deeper understanding. Buddha's words lingered in their minds, a guiding light for their own creative journeys. The forest returned to its natural rhythm, a silent witness to the seeds of wisdom that had been sown. Another day began, the sun rising steadily over the horizon, bathing the village in golden light. Buddha walked quietly through the dusty streets. Villagers bowed respectfully as he passed, his serene presence a source of calm and inspiration. Buddha stopped near a small workshop, where Chandra, the potter, struggled to shape clay into a perfect vessel. The disciples listened, their hearts stirred by the simplicity and depth of the Buddha's teachings. Ananda closed his eyes and began to meditate, following the Buddha's guidance to look deeply into the nature of his mind. "Chandra, why do you struggle so against the clay?" Buddha asked, his voice gentle yet probing. Chandra looked up, startled, his frustration evident in his furrowed brow. "Master, my hands fail me," Chandra admitted, his voice laced with self-doubt. Buddha knelt beside the potter, picking up a lump of clay from the work table. "Creativity cannot thrive in the shadow of fear," Buddha began. "Let go of your attachment to perfection, Chandra," he advised, molding the clay with steady movements. Chandra watched intently as Buddha shaped the clay without concern for symmetry or flaw. A simple bowl emerged from Buddha's hands. Creativity is freedom, Buddha explained. Holding up the bowl, it arises when we embrace imperfection and let the moment guide us. Buddha placed the bowl gently on the table and turned to Chandra. Fear constrains the hands, but mindfulness liberates them, Buddha said. Chandra's shoulders relaxed, his expression softening as Buddha's words began to sink in. Perfection is an illusion, Chandra, Buddha continued. The mind seeks it, but the heart knows better. Buddha gestured toward the unfinished vessels scattered across the workshop. Each piece tells a story, each flaw a lesson, Buddha explained. Chandra hesitated before picking up a fresh lump of clay, his hands moving more deliberately this time. Buddha watched, his presence a silent encouragement. The clay responds to intention, not force, Buddha reminded him, his voice steady and calm. Chandra's hands began to move with newfound fluidity, shaping forms he had never imagined. Mistakes are not failures, Chandra, Buddha said. They are stepping stones to understanding and growth. The potter nodded, his tension easing further with each word. Buddha's disciples stood nearby, observing the transformation with quiet awe. Creativity requires trust, Buddha explained. Turning to address them, trust in the process, trust in the impermanence of all things. The disciples absorbed his teachings, their own creative struggles coming to mind. Mindfulness reveals the freedom within impermanence, Buddha continued, allowing creativity to flow like a river through our hearts and minds. Chandra smiled faintly as he shaped a new vessel, his movements fluid and intuitive. Buddha placed a hand on Chandra's shoulder, his touch reassuring. Let the clay teach you, Chandra, Buddha said. Listen to its whispers and respond without judgment. The potter's smile widened, his confidence growing as his hands shaped the clay with ease. Buddha gestured to the disciples, inviting them to join the process. One by one, the disciples stepped forward, each picking up a piece of clay to shape. Do not fear the mess, Buddha said. In chaos lies the seed of creation. The disciples worked alongside Chandra, their hands guided by Buddha's wisdom. The workshop filled with laughter and the sound of clay being molded. A symphony of creativity unfolding. Buddha's presence infused the space with calm and inspiration, his teachings resonating in every movement. Chandra looked around, his heart full as he saw the beauty emerging from each imperfect creation. Buddha turned to him with a knowing smile. Do you see, Chandra? Buddha asked, his voice gentle yet firm. Creativity is not confined to results, but flows in the act itself. The disciples nodded in agreement, their own creations reflecting the freedom they had discovered. Buddha reached for a lump of clay and shaped it into a small figurine of a bird. Life itself is art, Buddha remarked, placing the figurine among the vessels. Mindfulness teaches us to let go of fear, opening the door to boundless creativity, Buddha said. Addressing the group, Chandra bowed deeply, his gratitude evident in his humble gesture. Thank you, Master, for showing me the way, Chandra said sincerely. Buddha placed his hands together in silent acknowledgement of Chandra's gratitude, his eyes filled with compassion. The disciples followed suit, bowing in respect to both Buddha and Chandra's transformation. As the day came to an end, the workshop was filled with newly shaped vessels and the lingering presence of Buddha's teachings. Buddha stepped outside, his gaze falling upon the horizon where the sun dipped lower. Carry these lessons with you, Buddha said, his voice calm and reassuring. Creativity is the expression of a mindful heart. The disciples and Chandra watched as Buddha walked away, his robes gently swaying in the evening breeze. The village returned to its quiet rhythm, the workshop now a sacred space of creativity and mindfulness. Chandra looked at his creations, a deep sense of peace settling in his heart. The disciples reflected on the day's teachings as they prepared to leave, their minds enriched by Buddha's wisdom. The evening sky turned a vibrant shade of orange, the universe itself seeming to honor the lessons shared. The workshop remained a silent witness to the transformation, a testament to the power of mindfulness and creativity. As darkness descended, the village and its inhabitants rested, their spirits uplifted by Buddha's presence. Another day dawned, the river flowing calmly as the sun cast shimmering reflections upon its surface. Buddha walked along the riverbank, his disciples following closely behind. "Brethren," he said, "when faced with anger, respond as the flame does to the wind. It bends, it dances, but it persists." The sound of hammers striking nails and ropes tightening echoed across the river. Buddha's serene expression remained unchanged as he watched. Sariputta, a devoted disciple, approached Buddha with curiosity. "Master, why do you watch the river so intently?" he asked. Buddha turned to Sariputta, his voice calm and deliberate. "The river holds the secret to creativity." "Sariputta," he replied. Sariputta furrowed his brow, puzzled by Buddha's statement. "Creativity, Master?" he asked, seeking clarification. Buddha smiled gently and gestured toward the flowing water. "The river flows effortlessly, Sariputta, adapting to every obstacle without losing its essence," he explained. "The bridge unites the shores, just as creativity bridges the mind and heart," Buddha continued, his voice resonating with wisdom. Sariputta listened closely, his gaze shifting between Buddha and the river. "Master, how can we cultivate such effortless creativity?" he asked earnestly. Buddha knelt by the riverbank, his hand tracing patterns in the soft earth. "Begin with interconnectedness, Sariputta," he said. "Recognize that all creation arises from unity, not separation," Buddha explained, his words steady and clear. "Each drop of water contributes to the river's flow," Buddha continued, "just as each thought shapes the creative process." Sariputta nodded, a glimmer of understanding appearing in his eyes. Buddha picked up a small pebble, holding it before the group. "This pebble," Buddha said, "creates ripples when cast into the water, but it does not disrupt the river's course." He tossed the pebble into the river, the ripples spreading outward until they merged with the current. "Creativity flows when we embrace impermanence and unity," Buddha added. The disciples watched the ripples fade, their thoughts deepening with contemplation. Villagers paused their work to observe Buddha's teachings. Drawn by his serene presence, Buddha stood, his gaze returning to the bridge under construction. "The strength of this bridge lies in its harmony with the river's flow," Buddha said, addressing both disciples and villagers. "Creativity, too, requires harmony, balance between mind, heart, and environment," he explained, his voice resonating with conviction. A villager approached, his hands calloused from days of labor. "Master, how can we achieve such harmony in our work?" the man asked. Buddha turned to him, his eyes filled with compassion. "Work with mindfulness, not with haste," Buddha replied. "Let your actions arise from intention, not compulsion," Buddha continued. "When you align your efforts with purpose, creativity follows naturally." The villager bowed his head, his heart lifted by Buddha's wisdom. The disciples reflected on their own creative endeavors. Inspired by the moment, Buddha motioned for Sariputta to join him near the river. "Sit with me, Sariputta," Buddha said, his voice gentle yet firm. Sariputta obeyed, settling beside Buddha on the grassy bank. "Observe the river," Buddha instructed. "Its flow is unceasing, its destination uncertain." Sariputta watched the water, its gentle current carrying leaves and twigs downstream. "The river does not resist change," Buddha explained. "It adapts, overcomes, and transforms all it encounters." Sariputta nodded, his understanding deepening with each word. "Creativity requires the same flexibility," Buddha said. "When we cling to expectations, We block the natural flow of inspiration. The disciples listened intently, their own rigid thoughts surfacing in their minds. Buddha's words resonated, shedding light on their struggles. A bird alighted on a nearby branch, its melodious song adding to the tranquility of the moment. Buddha gestured toward the bird. Even the bird's song is an act of creativity, he remarked. It arises effortlessly, guided by harmony. Sariputta's gaze softened as he absorbed Buddha's teachings. Master, how can we embody such harmony in our creations? He asked. Buddha placed a hand on Sariputta's shoulder, his touch reassuring. Meditate on interconnectedness. Sariputta, he said, see yourself not as separate, but as part of the whole. Buddha continued. In unity, creativity flows without resistance. Sariputta lowered his head in gratitude, his heart filled with newfound clarity. Buddha rose, his robes gently swaying in the breeze. He addressed the group, his voice carrying over the sound of the river. Creativity is not an act of isolation, he said. It is a thread in the vast web of existence, woven with mindfulness and intention. The disciples and villagers bowed their heads, their respect for Buddha deepened by his profound insights. The sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the riverbank. Buddha's presence radiated calm as he turned toward the path leading away. Carry these teachings with you, Buddha said, his voice steady and calm. Let your creations reflect the harmony of the present moment. The group watched as Buddha walked away, his footsteps light yet purposeful. The river continued its flow, a silent witness to the timeless wisdom shared that day. Villagers returned to their work, their hearts uplifted by Buddha's teachings. The disciples meditated beside the river, their minds aligned with the rhythm of its flow. As twilight descended, the first stars appeared, their reflections shimmering in the river's surface. The day's lessons lingered, a guiding light for all who had gathered. The river and its bridge stood as symbols of unity and creativity. Timeless and enduring. Without self-compassion, we cannot extend compassion to others. A disciple asked, Master, how do we build self-compassion when guilt and shame weigh us down? Buddha stopped and turned to him, his expression kind yet resolute. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.